Hello, everybody. My name's James, and Suj has decided to take another holiday. Yep, we had a whole month off, and Suj has decided to piss off and enjoy sunny Wales for a change. Sunny Wales for a whole week. So this week, I'm doing 5 interviews with 5 sensational fantasy managers from the 21-22 season. I'm calling it Champions Week, and we're better to start than with the actual FPL champion for 21-22, Jamie Pigott. How are you, Jamie?
I'm doing good, James. I'm happy to be here chatting with you.
Likewise, mate. It's a pleasure to speak to you. I've been thinking in my mind, you got the FPL champion on. You can ask him anything you want as a first question. Where's best to start, James? And for me, it was obvious. Why did you start supporting Tottenham, mate?
I've been a Spurs fan for 15 years now, and soccer has always been my favorite sport. I played it for forever, and being a soccer fan in the US, I never found the MLS has never been something that I felt like the best players play at. The best players play in Europe. So I was always gravitated towards English soccer, even as a young kid. And then I can't pinpoint it to a specific, this happened and I became a Spurs fan. I think it was just where they were relative to the other teams. They were that like 6th place, 5th place for a while.
You wanted pain, Jamie. Is this what you're telling me?
I didn't know I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I'll be the first to admit that. But I like that idea of, at that time, a little bit of an underdog. There was a lot of, everybody was supporting Man U and Arsenal. And it was, I don't know, the magic of the white kit on the field and just where they were in the mentality. It kind of rung true with kind of how I like to root for, and rooting for a little bit of an underdog, but also somebody who wins most of the games.
Was there an influence on certain players? Because Tottenham did have a spell of having like an American contingent, Brad Friedel, Clint Dempsey, or are we going back further?
That's probably, maybe a little bit before Dempsey, but that probably wasn't a big factor, I don't think. But I mean, yeah, you're right, they were there more so than other teams. I think it was just, Spurs kind of rung true with how I felt, and I kind of just gravitated towards them. And then as they kind of picked up over the last 15 years, I got more and more involved and more dragged along the ups and downs of the roller coaster that is Tottenham. But I'm here for it. Bleeding lily white for sure.
Good man. As do I. Have you been over here to a game yet? Because I know obviously that's now going to happen. Would this be the first time for you?
And it would be the first time I watched Spurs when they came on a US preseason tour years ago. And I was abroad. I studied abroad in 2012, and I did try to go to a game, but at the time when I was in London, Spurs were playing at Old Trafford, that game that they won 3-2, which was wild. And I was trying to find a way to it. I couldn't end up going to a Spurs game that trip. So I went to a Fulham Man City game in London while I was there. But I haven't been to a Spurs game in London. So looking forward to it this year for sure.
Ironies of ironies. Jan Vertonghen scored our first goal in that victory at Old Trafford. I'm sure you've heard the comparison here, right?
No.
Yeah, a handsome version of Jan Vertonghen, mate. No, you can't see
it.
And Clint Dempsey scored our third that day. Do you know when you're coming over yet, or is that undecided?
I've got some potential dates out there, working with Premier League to figure it out, but I think it's a little slow to figure it all out. And but we'll circle back as I hear back from them. But I first, I put out a Twitter poll to get some opinions of everybody else about, hey, what should I try to target? And April is the Man U at Spurs, and then try to go to Spurs at Liverpool. I think that is the first choice right now. April, better weather. My wife and I, our 5-year anniversary was right around the same time, so maybe we carry the trip on and do a little bit of fun. So that's the goal. We'll see if that gets scheduled or if I have to shuffle plans around. But thank you.
No. Listen, when you come over, I want to know about it, mate. I want to know
Yeah,
about it.
I'll let all people know.
If they let you into the non-corporate bit, like let me give you a tour of the stadium, mate. I'd love to.
Yeah.
I want to talk obviously FPL with you. We can't not. How does it feel now? We're nearly 2 months since the season finished. Has it actually sunk in yet? Because I always sit here with this. It almost feels like unimaginable to actually finish first in this game. Has it sunk in yet?
I was thinking about this the other day because I'm like driving home from work and I'm just like listening to you and Suj or another podcast, and I'll be sitting there. I'm like, holy shit, I actually did it. I got more points than everybody else. How did that happen? And
Did you cheat?
No, I didn't cheat. I swear. I don't think you can cheat unless you have a time machine. It's still, I get like waves of like, holy shit, it happened. I did it. It's one of those things that's like, well, if all the stars have to align in order for it to happen, that it's, it happened for me. So pretty still wild and still, a bit unimaginable, but
it happened.
Here we are now. I'm talking to you.
It's real, and congratulations, mate. The bit that I think might make a few people sick. So for those who haven't seen you or heard from you before, you don't have a long FPL history. It's not like you've been there bashing on the door since 2006. Can you just tell the listeners who might not have heard you elsewhere what your FPL history is? Because people are going to be sick in the back of their mouth if they don't know, I think.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I started. So last year was my third technical season. If you look at my history, the first year, a buddy of mine invited me to join a mini league, and I joined. I did auto draft, and then I came back on the first week after the games had kicked off and realized I'm stuck with this team for the rest of the season, and I kind of just quit after a couple of weeks. And I was like,
"This
is not very fun." Then the following season, I was like, all right, let's come back and let's do this the right way. And so from the start, I was engaged more across the season, but it was still a hobby. It was still fun in the background, not really serious about it. And then as it got close to the end, I was like close to winning that mini league. I was I was just in second place at the end, but it was kind of a battle. I was, close enough to winning, and I was like, all right, now I'm hooked. I kind of want to, attack this next year. So my last year, 21-22 season, I kind of jumped in. The Euros kind of got me excited about it with Euro fantasy over the summer, and then hit the ground running in the beginning of the year, and I did better than I expected.
Slightly. So what was the target? So you were almost saying to me, year one didn't matter. Year two was trial period. Where did you finish? Was it about 200K? I want to
say. 250K, I think.
Yeah, it was good finish for a first serious season. Very good. Not quite as good as obviously year three. So you're almost saying your second full season, you won Fantasy Premier League. Off the back of your first proper season, what was the target going into the season just gone? Are you then thinking, have you got more of an understanding to think, oh, now I want to finish top 100K or top 10K? Are you even at the point then where you've even formed targets?
I didn't pay any attention to overall rank the first year. I didn't know I was really 250K until the end of the season. I didn't know anything about, targets of top 10K. And so going into the next season, all I cared about was I wanted to be the guy who was first. I was telling Adam right afterwards, my goal that first season was to beat Derek. Derek was the guy who won the league the previous year. And so that was my goal. I didn't care about overall rank. And then as the season was going and I could see my overall rank creeping up, then I was like, this is fun. I can, as it was continuing to chip away and because I didn't have the best amazing start last season either, but from like 1 million up through, I just kind of kept climbing through the entire first half of the season, and so every week it was like, well, this is kind of fun. Hey, I'm getting closer. Oh, this is better. We're like, holy shit, there's a lot of people that play the game and I'm really high up. So it was continued to get exciting across the season until like the halfway point, and then I was like, I'm in it. This is something I can try to go for.
Is Derek the guy that introduced you to FPL?
Yep.
What does he think?
Kyle.
What does he think about the fact that you've won it?
He would. He loves it. It's funny because I think it was early on. We joked around, if I won, we'd start a podcast, and I'm like, I don't have time to do what you guys do all the time. But I'm like, hey, well, now I actually won. Now I have like a grounds to, if I wanted to, a platform that we could start that podcast. We haven't actually made any plans on it, but we kind of joked around that. So he's like, great, this is my platform to go up to the next step. But he's just a really good buddy that I played soccer with through high school, and we've kept in touch. And he's a Chelsea fan, so I get some insights. It's okay, we're friends. We can put that aside from the friendship perspective, and but yeah, boo with respect to the team.
You raise an interesting point though, something that I did want to ask is, are you going to do anything with this? Obviously, I know you're going to come over and you've got the things that you've won in terms of doing it, and the prestige obviously never leaves. But has it made you think, okay, yeah, we will go and do this podcast, or you do want to go into YouTube, or you want to go into writing? Is there anything from winning the game that's made you think, I want to do this full time, or anything like that?
There's like, it's definitely exciting, and I see the opportunities that I could, but at the same time, I'm like, I've got a busy job. I'm a consultant, engineering for design wastewater treatment plants, and so my job is pretty busy, and I'm like, I don't have the time to, I just have enough time to like think about it myself. And so to then take that next leap, it feels like a big barrier for me to really do it. But as I do this more often, I might get a bit of an itch to keep it going. And I've really appreciated the FPL community over the past year, and just from being a bit of a lurker and on Twitter, and kind of just taking information, and people are interested in what I have to say somehow, some way. I guess that's what happens when you win. But I'm like, what do I say? I don't have too much to say.
Well, people do want to hear what you're going to say, and it's part way on this. We talk about next season as much as we talked about last season. One of the reasons for that is you've already been on some outstanding other content creators, and I don't want it to be too repetitive. Certainly, I've watched your YouTube videos with Adam on Above Average FPL, and Andy, Let's Talk FPL, both friends of the show, where they kind of go into your season in a lot of detail, and I highly recommend those. There's a few things I do want to touch on. Start of last season, okay, you haven't got a set target. Something really changed from game week 1 to game week 8, and it was premium defenders. When you wildcard in game week 8, they were all in there basically, but you didn't start with any. Is that right? In game week 1,
I had none. I didn't even have Trent at game week 1. My defense was terrible. I squeezed in Bruno, Salah, and Son in my midfield, and I can't even remember who was up top. Antonio. But my back line was terrible, and everybody was on Luke Shaw, and it was terrible. And so, yeah, I saw an opportunity at that point to, just over the long haul of when I wildcarded, just to take I didn't want to focus on transfers on my defense. And at the time, James and Chilwell and everybody was just had good fixtures, and good, City had great fixtures from a defensive perspective. And I didn't want to risk trying to chase Pep around on who's going to play attacking wise. So yeah, I put a lot of cards in the back, and it kind of kept me really going kind of from that point for a while.
When you wildcard in game week 8, you were 250k basically. So, I mean, it's a great start, but there is this kind of myth of you've got to be right at the top from the start almost to certainly finish where you've ended up finishing. But clearly that's not the case. I mean, million game week 1, you had a very small rise just above million game week 2. It exactly hit the ground running. I'm looking at game week 5, you were still 917k. Then from the point you wildcarded, you basically halved your rank every week for sort of like the next 6 weeks or so. And it was like 125, then 60, then 30, kept going down till 17k or so, game week 13. So that wildcard really come into play. Has that influenced your thinking moving forward now on the fact that movement to the premium defenders presumably played a large part? And I know like your timing of Reece James was really spot on and stuff. Does that play
Yeah.
a large thinking into what you're thinking for next season? Because there's so much talk about it with the pricing of these defenders. What's your thinking on them at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, they're great value, and I've been sitting here trying to figure out what I want to do, and the wild card I think is the biggest factor on kind of what direction I go, and you have to keep in mind this season is so different than last season. I think from the time I wild carded in game week 8, the next time I wild carded was in 34.
Yeah.
So there's like 26 weeks in between those two, and we will never have any kind of distance like that this season because unlimited transfers, wild card on both sides, we're looking at on the 8 to 12 range probably. So I've got to figure out when I want to actually pull that trigger and plan around it. Last season, I planned around taking that wild card in game week 8. I ended up sticking with it because it was working. And on the front side of that leading up into it, I was able to attack the weeks right ahead of it. So thinking this season, everybody's going there. So part of my fun in enjoyment in FPL is also being a little bit different here and there and trying to find those places. I don't find it super enjoyable to just, hop in the raft and go along with the river with everybody else. And so now that everybody's looking at premium defenders, I'm kind of like, maybe I should, it served me well last season, but, this is a new season. It's different. So my first thoughts are just trying to figure out when I want a wild card, and do I want to attack the first couple of weeks and be a bit different when everybody else is going with them, with the ability I can jump back on the river if I'm screwing myself over by going too different. So it's a bit of balance, and I haven't sorted it all out, but I know people are interested in this season. There's going to be a lot more eyes on my team than there were last season. So
I'd definitely say so, mate. Yes, absolutely. I'm not normally an advocate of the early wildcard. When I mean early, I don't mean like game week 8 like you did it last year. I mean sort of game week 3, early doors. I know game week 4 is quite popular international break. That's sort of the earliest I'd consider it. But I think, yeah, you raise a great point. Me and Sudge have spoken about it as well. The idea that exactly that, because the unlimited land, it's not a wild card for 30 weeks or so. It's a wild card to 15 and then to a template, which I think in terms of trying to push for an early start, yeah, there's every case to just look at a team for 2 weeks and then go, right, I know I'm coming out of this. So you look at sort of assets like Villa, Leeds, those who perhaps maybe you wouldn't consider if you're looking at a longer term vision of your team and hammer into stuff.
Yeah, I think a little bit about, okay, if you wild card, and a lot of people are looking at 8 as, this nice split between the two halves of the first chunk of the season. But if you look at when you do that, what are you going to do? Go off of, everybody's going to go on pile into all the best teams, and then you're going to pivot off of them and go to not the best
this
teams.
is it. If you wild card at game week 8, are you going into Leicester, West Ham, Newcastle, this sort of thing? And yeah,
exactly. So I like the ability to target a shorter range of high upside players in the beginning. At least this is where I'm leaning right now, and then pivot and go, hey, now I can adjust to going back to the best teams that still have good fixtures for a while, that I'll have for a longer period of time, that are also less fixture more fixture proof. And then on the flip side, I can really just attack those first 4 weeks, be a bit different. And then if I need to jump on whoever has come up and been, we learned so much in those first couple of weeks that you can jump on those people early and build for a longer period of time. So you're not missing out on kind of the weeks 4 to 8 where, you don't have enough transfers. You have to take hits to get a lot of folks in.
Yeah, I think the closer we get, there'll be more of a movement to real short-term thinking for the start of the season. That's absolutely okay, because I mean that makes it wild in terms of the sort of choices you can have and differentiating early on, and then as you said, you can come back to the guys. But let's say you did go down that route, game week 3 wild card for now, for example, it's going to be difficult to look beyond those premium defensive guys if they're going to sit there for 12-13 weeks, exactly what you said, right?
That is, I think most of my thought has been on who do I have in game week 1 team relative to when I wild card. I haven't really thought about who's going to be in the wild card team, but you're right. It'll be hard to look past at least playing 4 premium defenders or the premium defenders that we find out are getting the most minutes. If we find out who the heck is going to be playing for Spurs on the wingbacks, we might have a better idea of who we actually want in our teams. But for now, it's kind of like one of those decisions where we don't have enough information. I don't really want to take that risk. I'd rather take a risk on an asset that I know is going to hit the ground running in the beginning with good fixtures right off the bat, and then pivot to something because I have more information after a couple of weeks. So, but yeah, the premium defenders are, I've seen a lot of things looking at, points per value, and it's all.
At the time of recording, we should say probably not too much is going to change, but we're pre-recording on Saturday. Tottenham have played earlier today against Seville, and who we probably think is going to be the first two choice wing backs we haven't seen in the Tottenham shirt yet, in Perisic and Jed Spence. So you're quite right. Can't even, if Perisic wasn't to play between now and the Roma game in 2 weeks, we can't start with him, can we? But you might go, well, I can gamble Ryan Sessegnon for 2 weeks, maybe, for example, and we can come back to those sort of debates. We all can nearer the time. I'm going to ask you, Jamie, about this period you had from sort of game week 19 onwards that led towards the triple captaincy with Salah in 26. And you deviated off Mo quite early. Am I right in saying that?
When he went to AFCON, I ditched him, but I think a lot of people did at that time. I don't think that was super unique, if I remember correctly. But then I brought him back. I ditched him at the end earlier than and went off of him when a lot of people still stuck around.
Because at that point, the week you triple captain him, and obviously as many people did, was obviously a hugely high scoring week. But you had a great game week within that high scoring week. At that point, you moved up into the top 100 for the first time, 33rd. What was going through your mind at that point? Are you at this point by game week 26 thinking seriously about overall rank, or are you still thinking I've got to win this mini league?
Definitely not.
Please don't think about the overall rank, by the way.
Don't think about that. I was thinking about, I just got to hold position because I had a chip plan and I knew I wasn't playing any chips in the next couple of weeks. And so I was like, this has been a nice ride. I'm going to drop from here. I just got to keep my expectations low so that when I do, I can come out of it with a bit of an optimism and still attack because I'll have, the benefit of chips in hand at that point in time. So it was just like, hold on to this rank. You're doing good, but don't get over yourself because, a lot of people are going to start to play a bunch of chips in those next weeks because I saw things in about 27, 28. We got all that news of all the doubles that were dropped in into those weeks, and so a lot of people had pivoted chip plans and were starting to attack those, and I kind of stuck with my guns and went with held those back. So I knew I was going to drop, but it was kind of a moment of, all right, I'm in the top 40 at this point in the season. This is real. And if I can hold on for a couple of weeks, when I play my chips, I could unload. If it works, then I have a chance. So I was excited, but I knew the next couple of weeks were just going to be kind of a slog as I dropped.
I think that's a real underrated strength, actually. Do you look back at that as a point of strength, that period, knowing that you were going to drop? You didn't get to 33rd and think, I need to push for first quickly. You got to that point and actually accepted that you were going to go through a few weeks of pain, and you knew it. And obviously, if you're 33rd and people around you are smashing chips, you're likely to drop, right? Is that something you really reflect on as like almost a bit of pride in the fact that you didn't panic at that point and think, oh, I've got to change strategy?
Yeah, I did consider it at the time. I was, I played around with, if I was going to wild card in the next 2 days, what would I do? And I thought, heck, I can't make that decision. I don't have enough time to figure this out and be confident in it. And I'm going to look back and be upset with the fact that I kind of just caved and pivoted without really giving it enough thought. So you're right. That was a bit of a strength in holding to my guns, but I never was confident enough that what I was doing was going to be the right decision. So in that case, I reverted to what my more well thought plan was, that I felt like from this point to the end, if how's the best way to get the most points, the way I thought was the way that I had my chips planned. So I stuck with it, and you're right, it was the right call in the end, but there was a bit where I thought I made the wrong decision in 33.
Well, you were on the same strategy that I was on from a chip perspective. I actually deviated to actually free hit in 38 in the end, whereas you went with 37. And I wish I could have flipped that back and gone in 37 myself. You had that dip, of course, and then the first chip you used was free hit 33. It didn't go well, did it? And this is what I think is part of the remarkable tale of your season, looking at it in details, going, you had some moments where you must have banged your head against the wall, because the free hit wasn't great, really, was it?
It was a disaster. It was terrible. it was absolutely terrible. So mentally, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to drop. I'm still dropping. I had a gray area, I was kind of sticking around, and I'm like, all right, this is my opportunity. I get to finally play my chips. I've got 4 chips. I've got like 6 weeks left in the season. And, this is my time. I can make a push. And I was at 500 and something at the time, I think. And yeah, it was just, I doubled. My free hit was terrible. I took out Mo, and he killed it against Man U.
Did the same,
again, damaged me again. The same. You did it the last time you played Man U, and I didn't learn my lesson. And so that was tough. And at that time, I was like, it's over. I've lost my chance, because I played my first chip was just a disaster. And the only thing that could pull me out of this disaster would be a miracle, which I thankfully got a couple of weeks later.
For context, the game week 33 free hit of 66 points sounds okay, subject to the game week. It was your 3rd worst game week rank of the season. Was using the chip, mate. It's incredible. And then to think from there, you've turned it around. So as Jamie said, it was 586 going into that free hit. Used the free hit, came out of it 1,114. What's happening in the mind there? Because it must have been a little bit of torture to think, I've accepted these reds. Now I'm going, and oh shit, now I'd held on. I've doubled it. I made it twice as bad. At that point, you think, "Oh crap! I've got to get back in the top 1,000." Or what's happening in your mind at that point?
Like I said, it was like, oh, it's over. I've lost the benefit of what I thought I had, and so it's like, oh, my strategy was worthless, because I just total double of my rank. It was just devastating, and I was sitting there thinking, well, here I am. I've lost it. So what can I do to try to have some fun and try to attack? I've got to be more different than I thought I needed to be, because now everybody ahead of me, there's, over 1,000 people ahead of me, and odds are somebody else is going to have like the same team as me. So if I really want to do this, I got to be a bit different.
Are you still trying to finish first at this stage?
I figured at that point,
go for it.
I didn't have an overall goal. It's not like I have a long history of being in the top 10K. So what's a 10K season to me versus 500 season? Like, that doesn't really matter. What would make this fun is if I go and win it. That's a cool thing. And at the time, it was also, what also could be fun is if I finished first in the US. So at the time, I was kept looking at the US rankings and then overall, and I was just thinking, okay, I've got to go for it. The guy who ended up being close to the top of the US ranking at the time, I think, was also at the top of the overall ranking. So I was like, all right, it's the same. I got to really go for it to pick up whatever 100 points deficit I think I had at the time. Maybe it was 120 or something. And so, if I didn't make that drop, because I went into the free hit and then the next week in 34, I was wildcarded. If I didn't make that huge drop, my mentality, I don't think would have been the same. I go into that week and I've got to be different. I picked different players that had lower ownership, and higher risk, and those actually help me rise. So if I don't have that 33 disaster, I don't make the same decisions.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't do what I did at the end of the season. So it's a blessing in disguise.
So
it was
ironically, you're saying if you'd have got 90 in game week 33, you might not have won the game.
I don't think so.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Honestly, to lay it out like that, to actually go the big setback, because that probably was the biggest setback of your season, I'm going to guess. So that actually almost forced you to play the game in a certain way that actually led to you winning the whole thing. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a funny you say it. If I did not captain Ronaldo, I captained Bruno. Bruno did terrible. Ronaldo grabbed a hat trick at Norwich. If I captained Ronaldo, I would have had an extra 20 points. I'm not sure if I make the same decisions or I make fewer of the same decisions and maybe it doesn't work out.
Yeah. I mean, to give you an example, again, I highly recommend the videos you did with the other content creators, but you went basically Matip, Van Dijk and Mane as your free Liverpool rather than Trent, Robertson, Diaz, Salah, Jota, whatever was in people's minds at that moment. You undercut it, which allowed you to have sort of like KDB and Son together. And the week after the wild card, you had a stroke of luck there as well, didn't you?
I did.
Don't be embarrassed about it, mate, because there's a reason why vice captains are part of the game.
It is. Yeah, no, I captained KDB and he didn't get a single minute. And I'm sitting there at the end of that game, like praying because he comes on. I'm like, well, my vice is Sonny. He's playing tomorrow. I didn't know what Sonny had done at the time. So I was praying for KDB not to come off for a minute. And then, yeah, he didn't. My captaincy moves to Son, and then Son, I think, got 19 points or something. And yeah,
got you 38, mate.
Yeah. That was a stroke of luck. Gotta be thankful to Pep for that one. And then going into the next week, because KDB didn't play a single minute, I'm like, he's for sure being my captain again in game week 36 in the double. And then the rest is history. I'm sure Andy will tell you all about that tomorrow.
Yeah, Andy Martin definitely will be talking about the KDB 36 tomorrow. Probably about 20 times on the podcast tomorrow, I should imagine. Did he triple captain him? I can't remember.
Make it a drinking game. Every time Andy says something about KDB, take a drink.
Well, I've got a question for why Andy's still on Twitter, but I'll ask him about that tomorrow, actually. So that took you up to 393rd. You've had a stroke of luck. Before we move on, thoughts on luck? You can't finish first with no luck, right? That almost
huge part of the game. Yeah, huge part of the game. You've got to be lucky to get that top level, no matter where you are. There's a huge part of it is luck. There's no denying that. But I also think, some of the decisions I made in the wild card in those last couple of weeks were decisions that put me in a position to capitalize on luck. And if I got lucky in a certain way, I would make more gain than other people because of the choices that I made. And so it's a huge part of the game. Guarantee I'll be the first to say that I was certainly lucky across a lot of decisions, but it's only a part of it. So if anybody who says it's all luck, I disagree.
No, of course not, mate.
There was certain decisions I had to make, and if I just went along with everybody, I'm not going to get this. If I got the same luck as everybody else, then we're all going together. So I had to be different.
You come across, and you already kind of said it, you're already, because there's so much focus on, say, that you've got these 4 defenders all over 40% owned at the moment as it stands. Your mind is working. What can I do different? You want to finish first again, right?
It's the goal, right? Nobody's done it before. So,
well, I always say, people laugh about it. People say, what's your goal at the start? It was to finish first. So well, I don't know. Should that be everyone's goal? Normally, I know by game week 3 it's impossible, but that, I guess we're all playing the game to do as well as we can, right?
Yeah, no, that's the goal. It's probably unrealistic goal. It's certainly unrealistic expectation, but it's going to be part of the fun. And the thing that, looking ahead to this next season, that I'm kind of worried about is, what lessons do I learn from this season where I got really lucky that don't translate over to this season and end up hurting me? And I don't know exactly what those are, but being a little bit different all the time may hurt me most of the time.
Yeah.
In a way that I didn't last season. And so, the one thing and the reason why I'm looking at making those decisions early this season, and then because I got the wild card that I can deploy early and kind of correct it and squash whatever damage that I've done. And so I'm able to risk it with that, fail safe of I got a wild card, I can wild card into more safer picks and kind of adjust the way that I do it. But I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to do it this season because, like I said, there are a lot more eyes. I think there's going to be a lot more pressure. But
if you win it again, mate, you've really got to start that podcast with Derek. You know that, right?
I got it. Yeah. At that point, I got it. I think
that's quit the job, mate. And when I asked you just a little bit about captaincy, because we've spoken about one there, and we kind of joke about it as luck, right? But you still chose the right vice captain, and in that case, that week it probably was quite obvious, but you still put the vice captain on the right person. Okay, so there is part skill in that as well, and okay, maybe because of one piece of luck, it turned into a second piece of luck in 36, where KDB looked blindingly obvious to you and went mental. How do you generally treat captaincy, though? Are you someone who, Mo Salah's got Fulham away? I don't want to punch against that. Probably this game week one is a bad example, but are you looking to pick your moments? You're picking the right battles, essentially, or are you someone who's constantly going against effective EO captaincy?
I think it's a little bit of both. I would say I'm never 100%. This is going to be the person unless we end up with a situation like 26 and Salah plays Leeds and Norwich in the same week, then it's more blatantly obvious. And even then, people were still thinking about Trent,
absolutely.
So I'm never, this is my captain 100%. I think there's always going into the week, I've got kind of a couple people, and I'm totally willing to roll the dice on somebody who's, even like a defender. I think I captained Alonso and it was terrible, at least 1 week last season. But typically it's more the proven assets. So Salah was probably, like 60% going to be my captain most of the weeks. But there's a part of me that's like, but I could be a little different if I, pivot and do this, go with this person. But it's a bit of a balance between that other person has to also be a good captaincy option, in my opinion. And a lot of times it was Kane or Son with good fixtures. I wasn't just kind of making a captaincy risk that was unnecessary. It was, like you said, kind of picking my battles of when do I want to attack against effective ownership, because over the long course of the season, the odds are Salah, at least last season, Salah was gonna if you did captain away from Salah every week, you're gonna lose across the season. But if you can pick your battles and do it a couple times here and there, you might be able to take advantage of a down game for Salah where he misses a penalty. Hey, that's never happened, and gain some. I
feel like you might have captained him that week as well.
That the one
Leicester
where
away,
I did not captain.
You didn't,
no, I went away. I think that was that the week when a lot of people went Cancelo?
It was quite a few people had come off because he was about to go to AFCON. It was Leicester away and Chelsea away, and I came off before those two. And it stroke of luck for me, certainly.
Yeah, me too. It was I didn't have him captain. I can't remember who I had.
Game week 36, 201 points. You jumped from that period 393rd to 10th. This is what you had been dreaming of, right? At this point, all those red arrows, then the free hit red arrow, and then you've gone from 1,000 to 10th, not just in 3 game weeks, but 3 of the last 5 game weeks. The story of yours is almost unheard of in terms of, and I'm sure someone has done it, but that jump from like 1,000, 5 weeks to go, I'd say you can't win it, mate.
Yeah,
would generally be what I'd say. I'd say good luck. You could hopefully still finish top 100 if it goes your way. But you had a game week rank of 310 to make your overall rank 10. Rather than focusing on the brilliance of the 201 pointer, because I know you've done that on other shows, what are you thinking next going into game week 37? Because it's all now back on the table.
It's game on.
What's the first thing you're thinking about what you're going to do next? Because you're obviously free hitting in 37.
Yeah.
Are you at that point? Are you thinking about 38 as well?
Yeah.
Or are you just so focused, right, 1 week, one at a time, like managers say, we're taking it one game at a time? Was it like that for you? Or were you already thinking, do you know what, I really want to get Ryan Session on in game week 38 as well? Like what was going through your mind?
Unlike real football managers, FPL, you got to look a little bit ahead because the decision you make can impact the next week. But the first thing I did was look through who in the top 10 also had any chips left. Because I was like, all right, I'm 10, but if 9 of the people ahead of me have a free hit, it's more like I'm not quite there. And then there was, I think like 3 or 4. So I'm like, all right, it's game on. And I looked through, it was still at that time I had planned my team around free hitting in 37. So I was pretty confident that I was going to free hit in 37, but there was, a little bit of me of like, hey, I still have this chip. The last free hit sucked. Sure, you want to do this?
Just been about leaving it and not playing.
Sure, you want to do this? You don't want to pivot last chance. And because I had that bit of a bogey, the free hit going into it, I was kind of, I had bad blood, bad memories that were surfacing going into it. But it was the 1 week I looked at it objectively, and 37 was a no-brainer to actually deploy it, in my opinion, given my team, and it's team dependent kind of a thing. And so I put together my free hit team, and I was looking at 38 at the time, but when you have a free hit, it basically, the decisions for 38, I couldn't really do that week because my team would just revert back to it. So I had to kind of put off 38, but I was still thinking about it. I've got 2 weeks left. If I do well here, I've still got 38. I was worried about like, well, shit, is Mane going to play? Is Diaz going to play? How's, there was, cup games and finals that were all spread out through there. So it was just, my mind was kind of thinking of everything. And when you're up there at the top, it's like any decision could kill you or could make you. And so the stakes get a little bit higher. But, going into that free hit, I kind of had to just cool myself down and go, hey, pick the players you think are going to do the best. And so that's kind of what I started to focus on.
You're 10th in the world, and you think the best way to win FPL is to captain an Everton player, which most people did, and I did as well. Captain Richarlison, who me and Jamie are obviously in love with now. Our mate Richie. Oh. But are you at that? Does it go into overdrive in your mind? You keep looking, going, my God, I'm trying to finish first in FPL, and I'm captain an Everton player. Does that become an overthink, where you just like, he's the best choice, I'm calm about it, that's what I'm doing?
Yeah, I kind of had to clear out some of that stuff and kind of trust my gut and what got me to where I got, which was picking the players I thought were going to score the most points. And at that point, with those fixtures, with Everton still kind of in their battle, Richarlison, in my mind, was the best option. I did weigh going with a Leicester player, so Vardy or Maddison.
You had both. You got 40 points from the 2 of them.
Yeah. So out of the 3 of them, I think those were my. But I also wasn't sure if Maddison or Vardy were actually going to play, and so it was a big enough risk just to have them in the team that I went with Richarlison and also I can't remember because I'm looking at everybody else's teams around me and be like, okay, well, guy in first, he's like so many points ahead of me. He doesn't have so-and-so. Now I can kind of attack on a team by team basis rather than just looking at effective ownership as a whole, because it's like you're playing a mini league at that point where you've got 10 teams and I'm actually attacking an individual team. Similarly,
you're also not worried about relegation either. It's worth saying at this point. Yeah. If you, as you said, if you finish 25th, 30th at that point, fine, right? You're going for it.
Yeah, you got to go for it because what's 10th? What sorry for whoever got 10th, but like what's 10th place if you're just trying to go win, get a trip to go see some games.
Nice.
Watch out of it.
So that week there was a lot of games on. Obviously, the FA Cup final was on the Saturday, and you picked no Liverpool or Chelsea players. So to see them go to war in extra time, you're probably thinking, that's good. Klopp saying he's potentially going to rest the whole team. Sunday happens. Monday, I don't know what happened on that Monday night. Arsenal might have lost at Newcastle. I don't know if you can remember, Jamie. It was about the most important bit of the week, wasn't it? Then obviously you've got
it's Monday night for you guys, but it's Monday in the middle of the day for me, and I'm sitting there like taking a break off work to watch Arsenal lose. It was a fantastic day.
So you've got no ownership in the Tuesday night game. Do you remember because there were the 3 games on the Thursday night? It was like Chelsea, Leicester, Villa, Burnley, and Everton, Palace. Do you remember where you were going into that Thursday night if you'd have made up ground? Because I haven't got the time to make it up, to be honest, mate.
No, I think after the first bunch, because it was a double, so a lot of those teams had the first game on the weekend, and I think I was second or third going into that last day, the last couple of days. So I was, I definitely knew I had enough time to make up ground. And my team, I think Suvanch was in first at the time, and I kind of thought that given what I had left, I could potentially be in first after the week, which was exciting. So that those Thursday games were exciting.
It's not a lot of time to think then, though, is there? Coming out then because presumably you weren't making any decision until you knew whether you were first or second. You've got to compare the 2 teams. I mean, surely you couldn't be making an early transfer in that week, right? You've got to gather all the information and stuff.
No, so the risks are high enough on a random given week to wait. Let alone that week. I think I made my transfer about an hour before the deadline,
which presumably was quite early in the morning for you, I should imagine.
Yeah, it was. It was later because they were all on at the same time.
4 o'clock, weren't they? Yeah, it was probably. You'd have still been in the morning about 7 or 8 in the morning or something, though, weren't you?
I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep that night.
So you come out of game week 37, you're first. Are you thinking? Have you given yourself time at that point going into 38? I'm winning this. Are you actually confident at that stage, or are you like me as like a Spurs fan? You're like, I'm going to shit the bed at the death here, or what's going through your mind at that point?
I was optimistic.
You just pleased you haven't got the free hit, right?
Well, the second one,
the 37 one was brilliant. Your game rank was about 60,000 or something. Yeah,
it balanced it out, so it was okay. No, I was optimistic, but I was like, I can't tell if I'm gonna need to watch the last round of games hiding behind my couch, or if I can, I ended up meeting up with some people at a bar. But I was certainly nervous, and I was kind of, like I said, cautiously optimistic of my chances, and I liked my team better. And so then it kind of boiled down to a handful of people that were different between each other. And so instead of it being 11, worrying about all 11 of your players, I think me and Suvanch had 7 of the same people. So I'm like, it's 4v4 guys, let's go. So it was a bit nervy going into it.
Did he captain? Obviously he's coming on with us later in the week as well. Did he captain Son as well?
He did. Yeah. So we both had the same captain, and he had Kane though, and I didn't. So I was sitting there watching in a bar with all 10 games on. And it was a bit hard because Spurs score. And I'm like, yes, wait, no, it's Kane involved. No. And then he was, I'm like, oh, but it was just an assist. Okay. I can take that. Bit of a roller coaster.
Did it ever look on the final day? Did it ever look like you were behind?
I was not, because Mane scored early enough that
you had like Mane and stuff, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I had Mane. Mane scored early, and that kept me in it, or gave me a bit of a cushion. Suvanch took a hit, so that gave me also a little bit of a cushion, but he kind of chipped away at it. It was close. Live FPL is not loading as fast as I wanted to, and being out in public at a bar, Wi-Fi is not great. So it was kind of hectic checking to see like, oh, what's happened? Oh, it's at 8. Oh, it's 12-point difference. Oh, it's back to 6. So it was tight the whole way. And then at the end, Reece James and Matip both got assists that kind of made it
clinched
clear that I think it was going to
You
win.
knew then.
I didn't know exactly until a couple of the games had blown the whistle, and I'm like, wait, he's only got like one player left. So I'm 12 points up. I'm like, wait, he's got to score 3 goals. I think it's it. And they're like, oh shit, I did it.
Yeah, and he didn't have Steven Bergwijn, so that was obviously obviously impossible at that stage.
And they weren't playing Leicester, so
that's brilliant, mate. I want to pick up before I let you go. Fascinating on a tweet you sent out a couple of days ago, which was basically just a kind of thinking emoji with Haaland, Kane, and Vardy. Is this something you're seriously considering?
Yep. It's and I've tweeted, I like Kane. I think this season, and even the second half of last season, he's playing well. I think for me, he's kind of the first person on my team. I haven't really done a lot of drafts or tinkering. I think you find out so much, and people are like spiking on somebody scoring in preseason, and I didn't read too much into it last season. And because I wasn't really as engaged last season. And so, but this season I'm trying to kind of filter that out and make some of those decisions later when we have all the information, because it changes and I don't have enough time to sit here and think through every scenario. But I like the idea of those 3, if I'm trying to attack those first couple of weeks, like we talked about earlier, of if I've got a wild card, I'm maybe more willing to go against Salah at the beginning because it's only for a couple of weeks. And then I can kind of pick him back up for the longer duration. So I'm minimizing that long-term risk, attacking kind of a short-term. But I haven't made any decisions. It's certainly something that I've played around with, like, if I could. I like Vardy. I think he could hit the ground running, and he's got Arsenal. They're not pretty good either. So
you can come again, Jamie. Yeah. They've got Arsenal away game week 2, but in all seriousness, it's the Brentford and Southampton home games either side are the more appealing. Vardy, it should be said, does have an incredible record against Arsenal historically. But all 3, so I mean, you won't see it. No one else is going to. Is that part what you're thinking? No one else is going to go all three of them. So
Kane and Haaland would be captaincy options in 1 and 2, and even Vardy could be. It's just it's like I said, it's that angle of me of like, hey, can I be a little bit different? What would make this fun is if you have somebody who nobody has, or you have a combination of people who are lower owned because nobody else can fit them in. You have to understand what you're leaving out and accept the risk of what you're leaving out. But if you're replacing it with something that you think has good merit and you're making decisions, all 3 of those players could score a hat trick on any given day. And so as long as you're willing to accept that, I feel like it's something that it's on the table. But don't hold me to it if game week.
No. This is 3 weeks away, and we're just speculating on ideas. No one's going to hold you to anything, mate. It's interesting that your short period of FPL has obviously been pretty bad for forwards, and I know you're particularly big on Harry, not just because of Spurs, but you've done some great tweets in terms of looking at him statistically, which I recommend people have a look at as well. But then presumably, if you go those 3, no Sonny either, no, right?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, what would that be? It's 23.
You're going to kill yourself. You go those 3 and Vardy.
32 and a half up top. Yeah, you can't fit in another premium. It's like a take on a 3 premium, but Vardy makes it a little bit cheaper. Yep. If you take any draft that has Salah and let's say Salah, Haaland, and Jesus, which is a common trio, you swap Salah and Jesus for Kane and Vardy, and you're there. Yeah. You could have a very template team with just those 2 changes. So you minimize risk across the pitch and just target that. And, who's going to do better? Kane and Vardy for 3-4 weeks? Salah and Jesus? I think it's a tougher decision than maybe people think. So it's just a thought I'm playing around with. But like I said, I've kind of haven't really sat down and done a full draft that I just love. I've kind of toyed around with a little bit, but trying not to be swayed by the noise of preseason where people aren't even playing, and Man City hasn't played a game, and Chelsea hasn't played a game, and as soon as they do, everyone's going to try to fit in 3 Chelsea players and
listen, you've finished the season winning FPL, and in game week 38 you had Timu Pukki and Emmanuel Dennis. So who Jamie didn't start with both of them, by the way. Who am I to argue with you, right? But is there any influence on the fact of, obviously, other than kind of Harry, really, second half of last season, there was kind of a dearth with the forward period. Antonio early on, little bits of Vardy when he was fit and stuff. It was awful, wasn't it? And obviously the pricing of the defenders now is why you're starting to see sort of 5-4-1s and stuff.
Right. I think I would still have 4 or 5 defenders, even if I had all 3 of them up front, because the value of defenders is still high. Maybe it wouldn't be all premium. Maybe it would be, because even a 4.5 defender is going to be way better value than a 4.5, or even some of the 6.5 forward or mid options. But you never know. Last season forwards were terrible, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be as bad as it was last year. And I think specifically Holland comes into a City team. Their Jesus switches, he could become a better option. There are more options. Harry's $1 million cheaper. I think there's just more options that are more priced better, that make it so that you also just never know what happens. We haven't had talisman forwards that are scoring 30 goals a season lately, but this season could be different. And so I think last season did that, and it's a good observation. And somebody may use that as a reason to go away from forwards, and that's okay. But last season it could change, and so keep that in mind. That could be.
It's very fair to say, and we've learned it, every FPL season is different. Mm-hmm. We can look at certain things, like you take Edison, you go, oh no, Edison's getting about 160 points. Yeah, we can see that happens like every year. But generally, shit changes in FPL every single year. Teams change, don't have the same 11 players every year and stuff. So things will be different. Absolutely. One final question before I let you go, Jamie. Bench. Are you someone who flat out cheap as possible, or do you like to have sort of 1 cover, 2 covers? What's just an overall thought process for you? Not necessarily at the start, but just during the season.
Yeah, I usually had 1 option. I was cheaper across the board on my bench. I think I had probably 1 dead spot on my team from a good chunk of the season last season. And then kind of the second bench option was, a 4.5 mid that I knew played and could come in and get me 2 points if I needed. I didn't get a lot of sub points, I don't think, across the season. And that wasn't an area where I, had a lot of money on my bench. You want to have somebody who plays, but maybe it's 2 people who can, like I said, come in and get you 2 points if you need to. And then if they get something else, that's some extra gravy, and that's fun. But especially with the 5 subs, I think we'll see, maybe we won't, but I think we'll see, more of those attacking mids that are often the ones that we get subs for. They may come in and get a cameo or a shorter sub appearance if they're left out. So I think there's less risk to going with an even cheaper bench. So I'm looking at as not quite as dirt cheap as possible, because I probably won't end up with a 4.0 defender. I might, but I think the 4.5s are a lot more value for just a half a million. But I'll probably end up with like a 4.5, either playing mid or playing defender as my first spot, and that's probably about it. Over the middle course of the season, last season, when you have a team for a longer duration, you might be willing to have a little bit more for injuries and for other things, so you're not having to take hits. But this season, with the wild cards and with the way that the unlimited transfers, I feel like it's even less a big of an impact, because you don't have to think so long term. Where
and 5 subs in terms of a bench as well, in terms of more likely to have 1-pointers, I guess, and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to spend transfers on the people who sit on your bench. Really, it's not something that is preferred. And
Remind me why you bought Emmanuel Dennis. Did you captain him, by the way?
I did not captain him.
Who did you captain that week?
I instead captained Sterling, and he got 1 point, and it was like he scored a goal.
So we all did shit. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. But Dennis, I'll give Dennis credit. He got 2 points in game week 36. If I don't have Dennis, I'm at 199, and that is not nearly as exciting as 201 points.
Brilliant, mate. I'm sure it's a lot of other forwards could have got you them 2 points, mate. Fair game.
Yeah. Points above replacement. I get it. Yeah. But,
Jamie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Congratulations again. The Planet FPL community salutes you, mate. Please let me know when you're in town for Spurs, mate. We must have a beer. It'd be great to meet you properly, mate. Where can everyone follow you if they live under a rock on the Bird app, mate?
Yeah, on Twitter, Football is Life FPL. Like, honestly, I've never been big in social media, so I don't even remember the exact Twitter handle. So you can find me, Football is Life FPL, somewhere.
Football is Life FPL. It's FUT rather than OOT. It's in the bio, whether you're on YouTube or the audio. The link to Jamie's Twitter's in the bio.
James has me covered.
Is there anything else I need to sell for you, or am I selling this podcast, or you're not going to do it?
Come on, you Spurs.
Good man. Jamie, thank you so much. Good luck for the new season. Stay in touch, mate. As Jamie did mention during this podcast, Andy Martin, one of the clowns of Twitter, FPL tactician, my Leeds United correspondent, will be joining us on episode 2 of Champions Week. And Andy does love a differential, so we'll be talking about that. He's already convinced himself he's going completely rogue at the start. So we'll speak to Andy about that. It just leaves me to say thanks again to Jamie. Be nice to each other, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.